You've never heard the truth told like this before, because this isn't just another video about relationships. This is a wake-up call, a mirror held up to the dynamic no one wants to admit. They're stuck in the quiet war between the empath and the avoidant. You think you're being strong by holding it together. You think you're healing by staying silent, but deep down, you're exhausted. You've been shrinking yourself to keep a connection alive that was built on your emotional labor and their emotional distance. You're giving love like oxygen to someone who treats affection like a threat, and the worst part, you've convinced yourself that this is normal, that this is what love is supposed to feel like, but it's not. And by the time this video ends, you're going to see that clearly, maybe for the first time. You're going to understand why your love was never the problem, why the pain you're carrying was never yours to hold, and why your silence, your patience, your loyalty, they were never weaknesses. They were gifts given to the wrong person. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will shift how you see yourself and them, not with anger, with truth, with clarity, with power. Because the moment an empath stops begging for breadcrumbs and starts remembering who the hell they are, the avoidant doesn't just lose a relationship, they lose their shield. And for the first time, they're left alone with what they've been avoiding all along, themselves. So keep watching. By the end, you won't just understand why you're hurting, you'll finally understand why you're done. The avoidant believes they hold the power. That's the first illusion, subtle, seductive, and incredibly dangerous. Power to them looks like silence. It looks like pulling away when things get too intimate. It looks like retreating into emotional isolation the moment someone gets too close. And in that space, they convince themselves that they're in control, that they're managing their emotions with logic, that withholding affection makes them strong, but it doesn't make them strong. It makes them unavailable. And being unavailable isn't power. It's feared, dressed up as control. Now here's where the dynamic gets twisted. Because the empath, in all their emotional depth and intuition, often sees the hurt inside the avoidant long before the avoidant sees it themselves. The empath senses the wounds, the childhood defense mechanisms, the protective shell, and they don't run from it, they lean in. They think, if I just love harder, love deeper, love more consistently, they'll feel safe, they'll open up, they'll come around, and so begins the imbalance. One gives endlessly, the other takes cautiously, only what's comfortable, only what doesn't threaten their emotional walls. And the avoidant, they start to believe this is just how it works, that their silence has weight, that their distance makes them mysterious, that they're somehow desired more because they're not fully accessible. But here's the brutal truth, what they mistake as mystery is actually misalignment. What they call not ready is often emotional immaturity, and what they label as power is actually just a sophisticated form of avoidance. The avoidant doesn't fear the empath's love, they fear what that love reveals: vulnerability, accountability, and the discomfort of true intimacy. Because when someone sees you fully, and still chooses to stay, that should be the most healing experience of your life. But for the avoidant, it's terrifying, because now there are no more excuses. Now you either grow, or you push away the very person who could have helped you. So they retreat again and again and again, until one day they reach out and the empath isn't there anymore. Not because they hate them, not because they want revenge, but because they finally realized this. Emotional availability isn't something you earn by waiting. It's something you either show up with or you don't. Avoidants believe the empath will always stay, that they can run, come back, breadcrumb, and the empath will always have the door cracked open. But that illusion only lasts until the empath finally sees it for what it is: an unspoken contract to stay small, stay silent, and keep hoping for change that never comes. And the moment the empath breaks that contract, the power shifts permanently. You don't hold power by withholding love. You hold power by being able to receive it and not run from it. Let that be the difference they remember you by. Most people misunderstand empaths. They see the softness and assume its weakness. They see the tolerance, the patience, the emotional generosity, and they assume we don't know how to leave, that we don't know our worth, that we're too sensitive, too forgiving, too easy to keep around. But what they don't realize is this: the empath isn't blind. The empath is choosing to see the best in someone until that choice becomes self-destruction. We're not naive. We're invested, we're not lost, we're loyal, and that loyalty in the early stages is our superpower. It makes us magnetic, healing, safe, but left unchecked, it becomes our prison. Because when someone consistently gives less, pulls away, avoids vulnerability, we don't leave right away. We lean in further, we try harder, we say, maybe if I love them the way they've never been loved, they'll finally feel safe enough to love me back. But here's the psychology most people miss. The empath's persistence isn't desperation, it's hope. It's faith in someone's potential. And that's exactly why it's so dangerous, because hope will keep you in patterns that are slowly eroding your self-worth. Hope will have you explaining someone's emotional absence as trauma, rather than a choice. And the empath is always analyzing, always absorbing, always internalizing. What did I do wrong? What could I have done better? But eventually something breaks. And not like a dramatic meltdown, not like a screaming match or a chaotic ending. No, it's quieter than that. Colder, sharper, it's a switch, a moment of internal clarity that says, this isn't love, this is self-abandonment. And from that moment forward, the empath begins to pull their energy back. They stop initiating, they stop over-explaining, they stop waiting for breadcrumbs and start noticing just how little they were being fed all along. It's like waking up from a trance and seeing all the red flags you painted white. The rose-colored glasses come off, and suddenly the avoidance behavior isn't intriguing, it's insulting. Because once the empath detaches, it's not temporary, it's final. And what makes it so threatening is this: we leave without warning. There's no grand speech, no last attempt, no final "what are we?" conversation. We just go, and that absence, it echoes because the love we gave wasn't ordinary. It was nurturing, healing, intuitive, patient. It touched places most people didn't even know existed. And when we walk away, we don't just take ourselves. We take the emotional sanctuary we built around that person. It's gone just like that, not to punish them, but to protect ourselves. Because loving someone through their wounds doesn't mean you have to bleed with them. And staying hopeful doesn't mean you have to stay silent. At some point, love becomes survival, and when an empath chooses themselves over the cycle, that's not weakness, that's power. Never confuse a soft heart with a weak spine. The most dangerous kind of strength is the kind that stops explaining itself. Here's the part the avoidant never sees coming: the aftermath. The silence that follows the empath's eggs. It isn't just absence, it's revelation. See, when the empath finally leaves, they don't just take their presence with them. They take something far more devastating. They take the mirror, because that's what empaths are. We reflect. We amplify, we hold space so that someone else can feel seen, accepted, even when they're not showing up fully. And as long as we're in their life, they don't have to face the parts of themselves they've spent years avoiding. The neglect, the unhealed wounds, the defensiveness, the fear of intimacy, all of it stays comfortably hidden behind our love. But the second that mirror disappears, reality hits, and not the kind of reality you can drown in distractions. No, this one sits in your chest. It follows you through every new connection that never quite feels like home. It whispers in your ear when you're lying next to someone who doesn't make you feel safe. It haunts you when you scroll through your messages and realize no one's checking in the way the empath used to. Because here's the thing no one tells the avoidant. You don't just lose the person. You lose the experience of being loved in a way that made you feel whole, even if you didn't know how to receive it. At the time, people think the empath suffers the most in the relationship, and yes, we do, for a while. But the avoidant, they suffer later, quietly, deeply, when it's too late to fix it, when they finally realize what they pushed away wasn't pressure. It was love, real, imperfect, unconditional love, and there's no replacement for that. No hookup, no distraction, no maybe someday. Person can replicate the safety and emotional depth an empath brings. So they'll try to move on, but they'll always compare. And nothing will measure up, not because the empath was perfect, but because they showed up fully, and that presence can't be duplicated once it's gone. Eventually, the avoidant is left with two choices: grow or repeat. They either confront the pain they've been avoiding, or they keep chasing connections that don't ask them to feel too much. But now they're not running from intimacy anymore. They're running from themselves. Because once they've experienced the love of a present, emotionally intelligent empath, settling for surface level connection doesn't just feel empty, it feels fake. That's the true loss, not just the person, but the version of you that they brought to the surface, the version you buried again the moment they left. So when we say the empath becomes the greatest threat, it's not because we do anything malicious. It's because our absence reveals everything the avoidant tried not to feel. We didn't leave to hurt them, we left to heal ourselves, and in doing that we forced them to finally decide, grow up, or stay hollow.